Welcome to LunaCco Coffee Chats.
I'm Cadee Duquette.
And I'm Jules Duquette.
We're your host and coffee enthusiasts, here to serve up a steaming cup of wisdom.
Blended with a dash of cosmic insight and a shot of practical business know-how.
Join us on this caffeinated journey as we dive deep into the world of soul-led entrepreneurship,
where we explore the mystical and the mundane, the esoteric and the actionable.
because we believe that success isn't just about strategy.
It's about aligning with your soul's purpose and harnessing the magic of the universe.
Get ready for a brew of law of attraction business tips, tapping for success, astrology for entrepreneurs,
and a whole latte more. Grab your favorite brew, cozy up, and let's chat over coffee. Welcome to episode 3 of LunaCco Coffee Chat.
Welcome.
Today we are going to be discussing hypnotherapy and law of attraction and all the businessy things and how that kind of correlates, and talk a little bit about your background with hypnotherapy. Yeah, we'll go from there.
Okay, sounds good.
For those of you that don't know, Katie is a certified hypnotherapist.
Yes, I am. 8 years.
Yep. And you went to school
at HMI, which is the Hypnosis Motivation Institute. It's out of California.
Mhm.
And it was started by John Kappasinian, who was also very innovative in hypnosis in the US and helped to write a good amount of the definition of hypnotherapy that's in the Library of Congress.
Very cool. And as such, you learned, so is it Kappasinian?
Yes.
Hypnosis.
Rather than Ericksonian.
And now there's probably a large handful of probably different types of.
I don't know if there's a lot of different names that are being used in correlation with being like the father of hypnosis type thing. Erickson was definitely considered the father of hypnosis, but Kappasinian has been a big proponent in hypnotherapy rather than just hypnosis. And there are several others, I'm sure, who have taken it down their own roads.
Because like I was thinking about, just like off the top of my head, there's QHHT, which is Dolores Cannon's quantum hypnosis something therapy. I don't remember what the other H stands for. It doesn't matter. Maybe it's quantum healing hypnosis.
Go ahead and say what you're doing and I'll look at it.
And then there's RTT, which is rapid transformational therapy, which is also hypnosis based. And then, so Katie already is certified, like she said, for 8 years. I'm in the process of getting my certification. And it was funny when we were chatting about this, I actually remembered that I do have one certification that went into hypnosis as part of the overall, which was emotional clearing. I forget the exact term, but it was emotional clearing practitioner or something along those lines that I took 2 levels of. And that was very strongly using energy healing techniques as well as hypnosis to clear emotional blockages in relevance to law of attraction and just better living.
Erickson actually was the one who was used to develop NLP, his hypnosis.
Oh, okay.
Mm-hmm.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
I didn't realize that was its starting point.
He used
used to know that.
Yeah, he used a different form of language to help people who he was working with hypnosis.
Which is funny because I actually have an NLP master certification as well. But it's been quite a few years, and I probably did know that in some introductory lesson to that course.
Yeah, there's a lot of things I used to know.
And for those of you that don't know, NLP is Neuro-Linguistic Programming, and it uses a series of different techniques that it makes sense because they are very closely correlated with a lot of hypnosis techniques, like things like mirroring and selective language choices. In order to really speak to the person, you choose to use language that they're using and things like that.
QHHT stands for Quantum Healing Hypnosis Technique.
Not therapy technique. Okay. I was pretty close.
You were very close.
Pretty
close.
And that's really QHHT is a type of transpersonal hypnosis, which is so I'm taking my basics hypnosis certification right now in Erickson and Elman methods. And then next year I'm planning on doing a transpersonal hypnotherapy program.
Okay. Well,
Yeah.
Kappas actually started off as a stage hypnotist, and he would perform across the country doing hypnosis from the stage. And he had some very interesting methods and it worked well. He could tell if somebody was a somnambulist really easy. And a somnambulist is somebody who is quite often in the state that you're trying to get somebody to for hypnosis. They very easily fall into hypnosis because have you ever driven down the road and when you finally got where you're going, I do not remember that trip at all. Somehow I got from point A to point B and I barely remember any of the trip. How did I do that? You were in a state of hypnosis pretty much, pretty darn close to what we're trying to get you to for hypnosis because it's a somnambulist state that the road sounds and the traffic and different things help to take you down into. But enough of your subconscious was still working to get you where you needed to go. Now, sometimes it gets you someplace that you go often and it wasn't where you were headed, but nonetheless, it helped you to get where you were going to go without any incidences.
Yeah. And the somnambulist
Mhm.
state is really what QHHT is all about. Is
Right.
Dolores when she was learning hypnotherapy, which was most certainly Erickson hypnotherapy when she was learning, most
Well,
likely, right?
I'm
Yeah.
sure that's where it was
Um,
learned from.
the key thing, because I remember when we started hearing about her technique, you were like, that's where they tell you not to take people
Yeah.
if you can help it. And that's like pretty much the only place she wanted to pull people into was
Yeah.
that state.
Well, normally you don't want to take someone down that deep just because there's a discomfort there. When you're taking someone into hypnosis, normally for hypnotherapy, you still want them to be somewhat aware of what's going on. You take them down into a somnambulistic state.
They have no awareness.
Yeah, they don't have the awareness there. And a lot of people felt that was more unethical to take someone down where they don't have the awareness.
And I think it makes sense for the type of work she was doing because there wasn't a conscious coloring of the
Right.
past life experiences she was getting and then some of the other stuff. And I know all of her sessions were recorded
That's what I was
and
just
were
going to say.
available to the people that were going under.
And that was the way that they could get around going to a somnambulistic state was that as long as it was recorded and as long as the person had some way of knowing what occurred while they were there,
And I'm
then
sure that they knew exactly what they were
Mhm.
getting into once that was her regular
Yeah.
practice. But it is interesting because that was something that I know she was talking about that something like 1 in 60 people or something along those statistics were like natural.
Yeah.
But she got it to a point with her QHH technique where she could bring all but 1 out of 60 into a somnambulous state, which
Yeah.
was like it was really unheard of because a lot of people weren't doing work in those states because as she puts it, weird things happen
They do.
in somnambulous states,
Yeah. And they were just concerned that
which makes sense.
yeah, there was definitely a concern as to what was really happening. They
Yeah.
didn't know what was happening themselves. And there were therapists who were actually helping to, without necessarily doing it on purpose. I'm not saying they were being unethical, but their
Sure.
own background, their
Colors it.
own beliefs, their own thoughts color what they were saying. And so sometimes people were coming out of those states now believing that they had gone through some trauma that they never remembered ever going through.
Yeah, I don't think we want to get too
I'm not
much
going to
into
go into
the
that too
but
far, no,
that
but
feeds into the satanic panic of the 80s that was largely
yeah,
due to accidental
yeah. That
uh
hypnotic suggestion.
Yeah.
And it's
Because they thought that they were uncovering some terrible wrongdoing, but in reality, they were planting terrible wrongdoing really into these children's
and
heads.
Dolores speaks about that. She speaks about what she saw others coming up with, and she was never having those type
Well, and
of sessions.
no, and she has talked at length about ethical consideration of hypnosis and the fact and like how she phrases things
Right.
because and not leading people
Exactly.
down a road. So she's talked at length in a lot of her videos about how purposely careful she is, where she'll ask open-ended questions instead
Right.
of leading questions and that kind of thing. Because she's done everything from past life regression, future life regression, parallel life regression. And she's also done a lot of the, I guess, also a type of regression for uh, alien abduction
Mhm.
folks and a whole lot of that stuff. And she talks about how the experiences that she was going through with people, because she was really at the very early stage of doing the alien abduction hypnosis,
Ah,
where she knew hypnotherapists that would get them onto the ship, but then they wouldn't know where to take them from there. But she wasn't trying to take them anywhere. And so the mindset of, I'm not trying to take them anywhere, I'm just trying to have them tell me what happened,
right.
was very different. And that she was saying that a lot of people were uncovering these really negative, horrible experiences in these lighter types of hypnosis because the experience was colored by human fear of the unknown. And I think the fear of the unknown that the hypnotherapist also was harboring during the session. But she was just so openly curious
Yeah.
about everything that the stuff that she was uncovering in those deeper levels of hypnosis was overall incredibly positive.
Oh, yeah. And I'm not saying that other therapists don't use that level ever.
Right.
I mean,
Because there's
because it
certain parts, yeah.
can be used for medical hypnotherapy needs that can arise. But in those cases, and truthfully, in a lot of hypnotherapy offices, you do have recording going on so that you've
Yeah.
got something that allows people to know that everything was all right and was above board. And I think that was a huge part of what the concerns were.
Yeah.
Erickson worked to make sure things were ethical. He was an ethical man. He just sometimes used what we would call extraordinary means to get somebody to get to that hypnotic state.
Which very largely plays into NLP
And
as
that's where,
well.
yeah,
So that makes sense. That was the fathering of NLP
yeah,
because NLP techniques are, it is funny, but in a lot of ways, NLP was started and developed in a stage situation. A lot of times there were these courses where they would be bringing people up onto stage or to the front of the class kind of thing and walking them through the session. And there is a theatricality
yeah.
about it that is very, and like the phrasing, like is purposely odd. Like a lot of times, and you'll see that with a lot of hypnosis as well. Each word is very specifically selected for a
Oh, yeah.
specific purpose. And it's not a natural way of speaking. It's not a natural language flow often.
I think the way he used to use it is he would say it was precisely confusing. It was very precise in the words that he chose that would misdirect so that it would help to close off that part of your mind that's trying to say, now I can't do that, to the part of the mind that can do that. It's allowing the under subconscious to have a little bit more control and
Yeah.
quiet the ego, which
Yeah.
loves to speak all the time.
So if you think about a lot of Jung's work in
Mhm.
regards to the subconscious, like your subconscious is a theatrical bitch anyway. Like she likes to talk in metaphors and archetypes and those kinds of things.
Yeah.
So it makes sense that to get to the subconscious, sometimes you have to be a little bit odd.
It's true. It's true. Yeah. Where I went, Kappas was the one that taught, and his son now runs it. I believe it's George. And they have it set up so nice because each one of the lessons you are basically in a classroom. You're doing it online, but you are sitting with the rest of the class. There's a class of others who are taking that course right there at the institute. And you feel like you're sitting right there as you're hearing lectures or you're hearing instruction. And that was really cool. And then they would do some hypnotic sessions during that time to help different people because people would go there for those to be given those sessions. And then he would have some of his graduates work with them further after the session that was taped. But it was really cool. It was quite interesting. And John really had still on some of the courses, because I took some that were done by him before he died. And yeah, you could see where he might have been on the stage at one time. It's very interesting, but he was so fun to listen to. And his son, George, wow, he's got a sense of humor that's just delightful. And it's so much fun to listen to him talk and the stories that he can tell about his life and about his father's life and, what he went through. So it was an exciting thing to do. I really enjoyed it. And I can't remember how many hours the course was, but it was
I
like
think we had looked into it. It was like 700 or
720, something like that.
something
Yeah.
around that.
And I loved it. I really loved it. And I really enjoy doing the sessions. There's usually the energy is just so fun because you do feel that you're getting some assistance from elsewhere to help take somebody there and to hear what they need to hear and be able to share with it. And then to get the comments afterwards of what the person went through. I loved it, really do. And I still love it. I still love doing sessions, doing recordings of taking people in for their own self hypnosis and stuff. It's fun.
I think that's been something that's been really exciting to me with not just hypnosis, but energy healing in general, is just being able to open that up to such a wider audience via YouTube or via Instagram Reels or TikToks. Because before, as a hypnotherapist or an NLP practitioner or energy healer of any kind, EFT practitioner, you really were only limited to people that you could either travel to or that could travel to you.
Right.
So you were really limited on how many people that you could help
Yeah.
in that regard. And now with being able to get Reiki sessions on a YouTube video or have a YouTube hypnosis that you can listen to wherever you are, I think it's so amazing that you can have access to just so much more in those types of help. And granted, they're a little bit more generalized than if you're going to have one-on-ones, but even then you can have one-on-one Zoom calls with hypnotherapists and EFT practitioners and get specific help. And I just think it's so cool that it's so much more open.
It is. And the way it can really work to help in law of attraction,
Yeah, let's start digging into that a little bit.
is that you want to get past those, like I said, past the ego, because the ego is where all of those lovely little limiting beliefs and
Your preconditioning.
yes, all those voices you've heard over the ages of your lifetime and people are passing on from over the ages of decades and centuries sit there constantly rolling in our minds. And it's also that voice that you look in the mirror and you say things to yourself that you wouldn't say to anybody else ever, unless you're not very nice. I don't know. But most cases, you wouldn't say those things to anybody else. And the nice part about hypnotherapy is we're taking you down to the subconscious area where you don't have so many of those lingering, those thoughts. And now you're to an area where you have more give and take, you have more belief, more possibilities available. Down at that level, it was described as that's where the negatives and the positives are. It's down in that lowest part of our thought process, the primitive part of our thought process. And The positive and negatives aren't like you sitting there going, I've got positive thoughts, which are love and joy, and I've got my negative thoughts, which are depression and anxiety. It's not like that. The positive thoughts are the ones that you've already made up your mind about. You've had experiences, and from those experiences, you pulled a decision. Okay. Maybe somebody took you out swimming when you were little. You felt like you were going to drown. You got scared and you never wanted to go in the water again. Doesn't sound very positive, maybe, but that's a positive decision you have made way down on this lower level. So, in order to get rid of something like that, you need to get down to that level and you need to be able to rearrange those thoughts. And on the negative side are things you've never experienced before. So, you haven't made up your mind about them. You have no idea about it. You don't hold any grudges, don't hold any feelings of higher vibration or lower vibration. And so those are just sitting there waiting for some experience to
Yeah.
occur.
And I think that we'll see it a lot with law of attraction where somebody will be like, well, it's really easy for me to manifest XYZ. But what I'm really wanting to work on is getting my business going or manifesting more abundance. And why can't I manifest that as easily as I manifest this free vacation or my new car kind of thing? And a lot of times it's those things that you really only ask for once that you think would be really cool and you play a game with it. And then a couple of months down the line or a year down the line, you're like, oh, that's really weird. I asked for this exact thing. And here it is. That's weird. And it is one of those things that's because you asked for it, you had fun asking for it, and then you let it go and you didn't really think about it again. But it's very hard to keep your focus off of things that you want really bad. And I think that's where hypnosis can come in is it gets you off of the obsessive
Exactly.
thought process around it.
Yeah. It
It
helps
can
you
break
turn
that up.
that around. It helps you to turn it around and start thinking about something from a different standpoint. And that's why hypnosis is often used for things like that fears of flying or fear of swimming or of what any of those type fears that were set in somewhere along the line from some experience. If you can go back in and now change that experience to a positive note,
Yeah.
you've got a chance for the person to totally erase that fear and move on. So it's like you can take them back and you can go to this, and now you can walk them through something more positive and have them feel the emotion of that. It can change it. But you feel those limiting beliefs really coming up is what it is, or you're feeling a blockage in there. And you can go in and help a person to relax about something. You can help to change some of that. The reason that you're holding some thoughts and concerns over certain things over other things is usually because you feel like you've had some kind of past involved that caused you to believe that this couldn't happen. And so it's very hard for you to hold the, and I don't want to say it's hard for you. I hate hard for you just because nothing should be hard for you. But you find yourself constantly telling yourself, I don't know if that can really happen. While at the
Mm.
same time, you're saying, I really want this to happen. And so that contradicts the actual vibration that's going on.
I'd love to talk a little bit about people like me in regards to hypnosis
Yeah.
because I have some control issues. So it was really interesting when you did the hypnosis because, and the first time you hypnotized me in person because I wasn't sure how much. And I think a lot of times people do actually think somnambulist hypnotism is what a lot of people I think are expecting
Yeah, I think so
is
too.
that they're going to go completely under, like they're
Yeah.
going to sleep and then they're going to come to you and the person's going to say, well, you don't smoke anymore. Congratulations.
Right.
Off you go. Which is really not what a traditional or a typical hypnotherapy session would be. A typical hypnotherapy session, you will remember the session probably somewhat to pretty clearly.
Eh,
And you'll be aware of what's going on and what's happening as you get pulled under. And I know for me, and we talked about it because when you were putting me under, was some of the things that were showing up were definitely like more of a in control or, you know.
Yeah.
So why don't we talk a little bit about that? Because I know a lot of people that would be like, I can't be hypnotized.
I hear that all the time. And yeah, there may be the very tiniest percentage of people who really could never be hypnotized. But in most cases, that's not the case. It's just a case of the hypnotherapist needs to keep at it longer.
Mhm.
But what it is that there are people who have to have control. They think they need control of everything. And so they're holding on so tight to that control that they can't allow themselves to go under. And they may start to giggle. They may start to cry. They may start to laugh really out
I
loud,
think I have
even
like all the above.
hysterically.
Yeah, I think I had all of the above when you were doing it.
Yeah.
Oh, what I'm curious about is in relevance to, because I think probably a lot of hypnotherapists out there would also have some questions around this because not a lot of hypnotherapy courses are going into how to hypnotize somebody virtually.
True.
And I've seen a lot of hypnotherapists going, I really wish that they would cover more about how to conduct a Zoom hypnotherapy such because a lot of hypnotherapy techniques involve touching the person a
Yes.
little bit.
Yeah, because what it does is it misdirects. It shows a little confusion. If you're taking someone very calmly down into hypnosis and you're counting them down 20, 19, 18, and then just touch, they're not expecting it. Jerks them for a second because what you're doing is you're giving them an opportunity did you ever see something float and it stays floating until you tip one end? And then it starts to go down because you changed its balance. That's what you're doing. You're causing a different balance.
Right.
So if you touch their hand, or if you snap your fingers, something that kind of changes it. Or you're going 20, 19, 18, 16,
Mhm.
15, 14. It throws off something in
Right. Because
of
you
their
have to,
balance because
yeah.
they're expecting that 17 that didn't show up.
Yes. Because you have to use a verbal cue or an audible cue
Hmm.
in order to do those virtual sessions, in
Yes.
order to be able to cause that kind of confusion or that.
One of the things I think that works best for a Zoom type thing, there are a lot of different ways that you can do it. But one that I think works well is just lifting the head up, looking at the ceiling, almost staring at the ceiling and imagining something coming towards you like a pendulum, and it's coming closer and closer and closer. As you keep your eyes in some kind of a position like that, they're more apt to want to go shut, go shut, shut, shut. And then you can count on down. And when you hit zero, snap your fingers. They're not expecting a snap always. Those little things can misdirect and help somebody who's taking a Zoom go down under without any touch, without any. And you can, once you've gotten them to a certain extent, you can even say, do you feel that feathery touch on your arm? And you'd be surprised how many people will feel a feathery touch on their arm.
Well, that's an interesting idea of almost sending touch via a Reiki
Yeah, exactly.
method
Yeah.
of that you're sending an energetic touch
Hmm.
to your client. That's an interesting thing that we might have to play with a little bit.
That's true because we're both Reiki masters and we've
Yeah.
both done distance healing. And
And
you're
people do
sending
feel it on their
energy, and
body.
they do. I
Mhm.
know, like I was doing it for one of my daughters, and I know she said, "Oh, I can feel the heat there." And other times I've done it for someone, I can feel cold on that area.
Mhm.
And it's whatever they happen to need. And we've done it with you. I've done it. You're, in another part of the room, and I'll start sending energy to you. And you go, oh, it's getting icy cold. And apparently that's what that
Needed.
muscle needed. So yeah, I think that's another way that you can do it. You could send energy to them to
Yeah.
touch them, to give them that little imbalance. That's all it is.
And I'm curious about, because I imagine that a lot of people that are getting into entrepreneurial pursuits might have a higher tendency toward control
Right.
folks. especially I think a lot of neurodivergent people and a lot of people that have had different types of trauma have a tendency to want more control in their life in any aspect that they can
Hmm.
have it, right? And release is a harder thing.
Right.
And I think that definitely relates to neurodivergency a lot because it's not always easy to quiet the voices
Right.
in your head and really give up control and ease into something. Do you feel like, because I felt this way personally sometimes, do you feel like a lot of the hypnotherapy or the hypnosis, like meditation, right? Because I see a lot of like hypnotic
Right.
meditation on YouTube. Do you feel like that would be difficult for those to really hit the deeper points with somebody that does have maybe a little bit more of a control issue
It,
because it's not personalized to somebody that might need that?
yes, I think that it really depends on where that person's coming from by listening to that. If by listening to it, they've opened themselves up to a possibility,
Mm.
there's a better chance. But if by listening to it, they're going, I'll listen to this when I know that's not going to work, chances are it's not going to work. And what you need to also know, and I want to make sure I mention, is that when you do go through a hypnotherapy session, you have control. You still do have some control. Your control is you can end that session.
Mhm.
Your control is if somebody, we get a bird making noises. And your control is if something is suggested to you that is against your moral standings or your beliefs, you won't do it.
And oftentimes people will like have almost hypnotic disclaimers on
Yeah.
the front end
Yeah.
in regards to those things.
Yeah, because there was a time period where movies and TV wanted to go into this whole thing that you could use hypnotherapy to create murderers or assassins or something. And that's not the way hypnosis works. You're not going to go against your own inner thread. But what I found when working with anyone that was really resistant to allowing that control to go through is to keep allowing them to know that nothing that they're experiencing is a problem. It's
Mm,
not a
yeah.
concern. It really isn't hurting anything. It's okay. It's just your body allowing us to know that you're resistant, and that's okay. I know one of my very first hypnosis sessions, I was still in school and we were supposed to start working with people and whatnot. And so a friend of mine said, oh, sure, come on over. And she had a friend of hers that I didn't know with her. And so I did the hypnotic induction with both of them at the same time. And her friend started just giggling. She couldn't help it. She was just giggling and giggling. And so and then she goes, I'm sorry, I'm ruining this. And I just looked at her and I said, you're not ruining anything. That's your body's way of allowing you to relax and let go. I don't mind it. It's a part of what happens with some people who go through hypnosis. You're just a little bit resistant, and that's not a big deal. If you need to laugh, if you need to cry, whatever it is you feel, go ahead. It's not a problem to me. And so we continued on with the hypnosis, and all of a sudden she went under so fast. It was very easy then because she understood what she was going through. And I didn't care. It didn't bother me. She thought she was ruining the whole session. She wasn't ruining anything. And it worked really well. And she loved it. She really loved the session. And it worked really well. But yeah, some people are resistant and some people just go under almost a second to say, okay, we're going to start. And with each session, you also put a hypnotic suggestion in that each time we do this, it'll become easier and
Yeah.
easier.
Which I think definitely helps. And I do think that in regards to law of attraction or business improvements, a lot of entrepreneurs will undergo hypnosis
Mhm.
for business improvement, for productivity, for a whole bunch of stuff. Because there's a lot of, I think, innate fear that revolves around starting your own business, working
Yes.
for yourself, becoming a business owner, becoming an entrepreneur instead of an employee mindset. And that mindset shift is huge. I know for me personally, I've occasionally been jealous of people that are a little bit more susceptible because I'll see certain people that like they learn law of attraction, they picked it up, they never dropped it, and they just their lives went versus, and maybe that's a neurotypical thing. I think it probably is versus maybe neurodivergence where it takes multiple times for you to really stick with something for quite a while. But I've also seen that in regards to hypnosis where people will be like, "Oh, I had one hypnosis session and it changed my life and it completely changed my course," and that kind of thing where it's really, I mean, it was good and it was helpful, but I don't feel like it changed my entire life overnight. And I think it's helpful to talk about these things because I do think that we have innate expectations of almost everything in this world at
Right.
this point. And I think if you go in, especially if you are a neurodivergent person, thinking that you'll need one session and that will completely fix your executive dysfunction, it might,
There's
because
a
some
chance.
people there are. Some people are like that, where they do one hypnosis session or an EFT session or an EMDR session, and that's all that they needed to hop on the train.
Yeah,
And there are other
it can
people
happen.
that are still trying to run next to the train and hop on, and it takes a significantly longer amount of time.
Well, I think what happens partially is that some people have a recorder going on all the time listening to the negative conversations.
Yeah.
And so you go in and you do the hypnosis and it helps to put an interrupt. But then something happens and all of a sudden the recorder turns on and off goes those wonderful little lines repeating themselves. And we have to remember that sometimes we do have to be repetitive on the healing side
Yeah.
as much as our ego is being repetitive on the conversational side in our head.
And I'm curious, so what did they tell you, like, how many sessions? Like, what's the recommended dose, so to speak,
That totally depends
on
on
the
the
person?
person. It totally depends on what it is they're trying to accomplish,
Right.
whether there's one thing that we're working with or mmany.
Yeah.
And there's a whole lot of different things. A lot of things you can work with in maybe 6 or 7 sessions, but there are things that may take longer. It
Because I'm
really does
curious,
depend.
this is just how my brain works. Oh, hypnosis is great. How could you improve it? What kind of system could you use that might hack this into a faster scenario? Because that's how I work. But that's how my brain
I know.
works. But I am just curious, have there been studies or do you know of anything of the difference between what would it look like if you did a hypnosis session with somebody every day for 7 days versus doing 7 sessions over 7 weeks?
I think it's better to do the 7 sessions over 7 weeks
But like what?
because you have to allow this way of new programming
Uh,
to actually settle in a little. If you try to do it on a daily basis and rush it, your body knows you're rushing it.
mm,
But I'm wondering, we haven't tried it yet, and I'd like to try it. Doing something like hypnosis with the lunatic, or hypnosis with Reiki, or with some other energy
healing.
program, energy healing. I'm not so sure that wouldn't work better.
Doing like a light induction and then doing LunaTap daily
Yeah,
or something along those lines. Because I'm just curious, because my big thing is I love having a toolbox. I love having something that you can break out regardless of the scenario
Mhm.
in emergency break glass
Right.
scenario. And what we've been talking about with hypnosis, which is so true of law of attraction in general, whether you're using hypnosis or not, is that resistance period.
Right.
And there's certain things that you don't, like you said, there's the negatives and the pluses. And the negatives are the ones that you don't have a huge individual personality connection to, right?
Right.
Because there are certain beliefs that you have that are individual level beliefs.
Yes.
It makes up who you think you are as a human being,
Mhm.
whether that's not really the case, but we have a lot of beliefs that we feel like are integral to our
Yeah, to
person.
us. Yeah.
And those are going to be a lot harder to shift. I don't want to say harder. It's not harder.
Yeah, like I said, I
It
don't
could
like
be
that word hard.
some
harder.
people could perceive it as being more difficult.
Right.
Some people could. Doesn't mean that it's true. But some people could see individual level change as a harder thing to pull off
Right.
than something that you don't have deep connection to.
Right.
That's even the case with
Yeah.
smokers identify as a smoker. It's an individual level choice to stop being a smoker in a lot of cases, especially with an addiction scenario. Um, but I'm thinking of, okay, so if there's a resistance period potentially,
Mhm.
and how do we shorten that resistance period over a bigger individual level change?
I do feel that you could do the lighter induction self hypnosis type thing daily because I don't feel like that's going.
Because that's almost just helping you be able to get to a meditative state.
It is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Especially, I'm going to be playing with doing that in addition to the brain entrainment to
Because when
help.
you're doing self hypnosis, a part of your ego has to stay awake in order
Yeah.
for you to continue doing what you're doing. Now, if you're listening to an induction, you might be able to
Shut off a little bit.
shut that if you have somebody actually a recording that you're listening to for the induction or a Zoom that you're listening to for an induction. But if you're doing it as a self induction or on that order, then a part of your conscious stay alert to try and remember what it needs to
Mhm.
take you down through. And so a self induction you could probably do daily. Even I really don't think that there's a problem with doing the recorded induction fairly regularly because
So it kind of just depends on like how deep and how long of a session you're
right.
working on.
But if you're working on somebody coming, yeah, working with someone at an office, quite often they're doing a good 20 to 30-minute session. That takes a little bit longer for I feel. Now I could be wrong, but to me, I think that's something that you probably shouldn't be doing on a daily basis. I think your body needs to adjust and work with some of those
Yeah.
suggestions.
So I guess what would be, do they recommend almost aftercare? What are the things that you can do to help your mind take on the new program?
I know that what we do on some things that you will have some written out suggestions, some things for people to do. And you will quite often put in some kind of little trigger suggestions so that if they start to go into a pattern that we were trying to change, that they would have a point that they could touch, maybe two fingers together or something that was be their trigger to send them back to feeling what they felt during the
Mm.
hypnotic state so that it would be easier for them to interrupt that feeling or that action or that fear. So that's usually what we're doing. We would be giving you some different triggers to try and help replace that. But I did remember there was something else I was going to say. It was about performance that you were talking about in business.
Yeah.
Performance is something that quite often is worked with hypnotherapists.
Well, some of the best I know, I think almost every Olympic team has an onboard
Exactly.
hypnotherapist because they've found that with like physical pursuit,
Yeah.
that your mind doesn't actually really know the difference between a physical
Mhm.
active training session and a mind walkthrough, like a hypnotic walkthrough of hitting, the finish line or being
Right.
the fastest or whatever.
A lot of your professional sports,
Yeah, it's professional
yeah,
teams. Yeah.
will have a hypnotherapist who is available so that they can help improve their performance. And businesses do the same. There are a lot of people who go for the law exams.
Yeah.
They go for performance hypnotic sessions in order to help improve their performance when taking those tests. And there are people in every walk of life that have gone to help them with their performance in something, whether it was ballerina on stage, whether it was an actor, whether it was CEO of a company. There are so many different ways that it can be used to help you with performance. And so it can be worked to help you with the performance of your business, most definitely.
Yeah, because I definitely want to play with doing some specifically for like executive dysfunction.
Yeah.
And because that's something neurodivergent folks like myself, like you, really can appear to struggle with. can feel that they're struggling.
You're not struggling,
You're not struggling, but you might occasionally forget that you're not struggling.
but you might be stressing. Let's put it that way.
Yes, because it's
Or
definitely,
avoiding.
yeah. Because executive dysfunction, I know, is a very, it can make or break the experience of becoming an entrepreneur. And
Yes,
if you struggle with that or feel like you struggle with that on a daily basis anyway, switching into an entrepreneurial role could exacerbate that feeling.
exactly. I think that is one of the things that bothers people the most when getting into a business is, can I do this on a daily basis? Can I
Yeah.
keep up the pace? Can I,
Yeah. And I want to play around for our own personal benefit, but also because again, this is something that yes, we've been studying a lot of these topics for many years, but there's always more to learn in
Mhm.
life. And one of the things that I really want to play with is certain topic like this is what's a shortcut? What's a path of least resistance? How can we bring that more into our lives? And I think a huge thing that I've seen with myself as well as others is, and again, I think we almost naturally gear toward neurodivergent people because that's so much who we are and how our brains work, is that the education system, specifically and especially in America, you see it over in certain parts of Europe as well, but very specifically in America, is they're raising and teaching you to be an employee, not to be a business leader, not to be an entrepreneur. Gary Vee has talked about that
Most
at length.
definitely.
And I have things that I really like that he goes into, and there are other aspects, and I'm like, no, that's how you get a heart attack at 40.
Yeah, right.
And I think that's just because who he is, it works for him, but that doesn't necessarily mean it would work for everybody. But is true, I think, that you are raised to be an employee in this country versus an entrepreneur. And just like being neurodivergent versus neurotypical, it feels hard to go against the grain of what other people are doing.
Mhm.
And
You get a lot of pushback.
you get a lot of pushback, and there are a lot of what feels like a setback
Mhm.
in regards to it. And it is not a path that is as well worn as the employee path in a lot of people's past experiences. Especially, I think there is a thing that we talk about with relevance to advantages of being white or being male or being from a higher class family versus a lower class family, and these types of things that can be barriers of entry. I think a large part of the barriers of entry is how were you raised and how were your parents raised and how did that trickle down? Because if you've never had a self-made business person in your family,
Right.
you weren't raised with seeing that as a path for you. So the path that is well worn through your family and through your upbringing is one of being an employee.
It's also, even if you did have somebody who made it on their own in the family, but they were a little bit more distant family,
Like
quite
ours.
often quite often you'll
Listening
hear
to-
other people saying things about them.
Yeah.
Or they'll be saying, yeah, they made it, but not everyone can.
They got
Or
lucky.
they got lucky and came into things just at the right moment. That's not something for everyone.
You might even see the quote unquote negative reactions around it where they get all the family members asking for them for
Yeah,
money and cash and opportunities all the time. So you might even see, oh, I wouldn't want to be them. They're constantly getting knocked on the door for, handouts all the time.
right. So there are a lot of different things, but what we do here in civilization in the US, can't say for other countries
Yeah.
because I'm not there, but in the US, we do hear this phrase often. People who start a business really can't make it. It's very rare that someone that starts a new business can make it. That's really the hard road to take. You hear all of these different comments. New businesses fail 89% of the time or some huge percentage. And you start going, I don't know. Could I make it? I don't know.
Yeah. And a lot of the choices that you may feel like you have to make as an
Mhm.
entrepreneur will look too risky for people that are on the path of being an employee.
Yeah.
They will look too risky. They will look too unstable.
Mhm.
If you see a lot of serial entrepreneurs that it took quite a while for them to find the right thing, A lot of times they have a
Yeah,
whole bunch of businesses that failed before they have one that succeeded. They swapped ideas constantly and they looked very unstable until all of a sudden they found something that really worked for them. And I think
exactly.
pivoting isn't something that, again, if you're an employee, pivoting a lot means it's harder for you to get another job.
Yeah,
Because it looks like you're flaky. But with entrepreneurial pursuits, oftentimes pivoting is integral to you finding the right exact niche, the right exact little thing. And sometimes that takes time. But if everyone around you is used to being an employee, that can seem like a very poor decision life wise.
yeah, to become an entrepreneur. It's funny though, if you really give it some thought, there isn't a single business out there that didn't begin as a startup. And how many businesses are out there thriving? So to tell ourselves that we can't is foolish. You could be the next Amazon. You could
Be
be,
a better
yeah,
person.
but you could
But you could
be,
have that level of success.
you could be that next
Yeah.
level company that everyone's looking for. And if you're coming from a status of trying to put high vibrational energy that is really you out there, you're going to be the next level business that really brings something positive
Yeah.
to the world and
And
to the, to your country.
yeah. And I think the key with advantage or disadvantage in any country around the world, I think it really does relate energetically to how much were you fed by your family and by society of where you belong in the scheme of things. And I do think that it's a real thing. I think it is a matter of whether or not you allow that to continue. And it has to be a choice that you break. And
Yeah.
I think you see a lot of people that came from nothing and got everything, and they have a very different viewpoint on advantage over disadvantage.
Yeah.
And I think it's because a lot of times those people see their disadvantage as something to overcome and prove wrong.
True.
And it's a mindset that can get them on the other side of the door.
It is.
And I really do believe that a large part of everything that we see as a blockage, as a roadblock, as a disadvantage is really about how you were conditioned to think and how you were told to think, how you were told to be, what you were told your life was going to be, what
Oh,
you
yeah.
were told the path was, and seeing quote unquote the proof in the people closest to you.
Yes.
Because that is a disadvantage if you've never seen somebody that's had uh, a successful business or a successful relationship or all of these things. That is a disadvantage because it will seem much more difficult to wrap your head around what that would look like if you've never had an example of it.
Exactly.
And I think that's the beauty of the access, the sheer access with YouTube, with the internet, is that it doesn't necessarily need to be somebody you know. You can get on YouTube and have this parasocial relationship with somebody that probably you can probably find somebody from almost an identical background as you that has made it.
And I would say if you find that person, binge watch them
Yeah.
because it's putting you now, it's like getting the friends around you who have what you want to be.
Yeah. And go into some of the groups. I know that there's been times where go into the groups that are for six-figure entrepreneurs.
Yeah,
Lurk if you need to, because
exactly.
the type of things that they're talking about and the way that they're talking about things are going to be very different
Mhm.
than the people that are around you in the same situation you're in. And you want to infuse yourself with the other side of the conversation as much as possible. And I think that's where what hypnosis in regards to business and law of attraction really helps you do is you're helping your brain along because there's a very common analogy with training new habits in your brain is that something that you have done repeatedly over and over again is like a very well-worn path on the literal topography of your brain.
Right.
It's a well-worn path. The neurons just want to flow down that road. If you want to take a different turn and you want to start doing something different, that is like you're cutting a new path. And you are trying to cut a path that is deeper than the path you were on before. And trying to get a train to go off the tracks into a new direction is something that will take a little bit of time to build.
It will.
And anything that can help you start creating those initial pathways, like hypnosis, like LunaTap, and help remove some of the resistance in the digging process, is going to shorten your journey from A
Okay.
to B.
It's also like brain entrainment.
Yeah.
If you can get yourself listening to those tones more, we do that all the time.
We do. We're doing it constantly because,
Yeah.
especially since I've started designing my own tracks that are very much led by my higher self and my guides,
Oh, yeah.
with, the ups and the downs and everything, and what frequency to use and all. That's helped a ton because we've been able to create more isochronic versions of things. Because a lot of the stuff that is on YouTube, a lot of it, I would say the majority of brain entrainment is binaural. And again, I don't like having two earbuds in very
Yeah.
often. I like having only one in, and I don't like constantly having to have headphones on for a
No.
certain experience. And I definitely can't at night. That's not even a realm of possibility.
Me either.
And a lot of the isochronic ones that we'll see, even for the sleep ones, they're not a full 9 or 10 hours. So it's like,
No.
if there's 3 hours, like that's not a full sleep cycle. So yeah, since I've been able to create our own, we've been using that a lot more. And I want to definitely play with brain entrainment, with some hypnotic inductions, with some subliminal messages and LunaTap and that kind of thing as well, to really deepen the experience and help you get on the path that you want faster.
I know not everyone can listen to something while they're working. Some
Mhm.
people can, some people can't. I like to listen to I like to listen to something while I'm working because I'm usually doing photo editing. I'm doing a lot of different things. I'll listen to something that helps to raise my vibration when I do any kind of inspired messages or channeled messages, those type things. But I also, when I'm working, quite often will listen to different or YouTube um, videos that are talking about law of attraction, that are talking about succeeding, are talking about those things that I really want to train my brain to do. And that helps also. The more you can listen to those type things to create that new path.
I think it just got a kind of funny analogy that I
Yeah.
think might relate well. If any of my past bartender friends out there, I used to be a bartender. I did craft bartending as well as like sports bar bartending.
All right.
But one of the bars I was in would do on occasion was infusions, and we'd do our own infusion
It's a great
liquors,
one. Ugh.
and I would do that at home as well. And in order to infuse alcohol with a new flavor,
Mhm.
you have to add whatever you're flavoring it with, right? So like an jalapeno tequila is something that a lot of people will do. So you cut up jalapenos and probably some limes, and you're going to put that into a bottle of tequila, and you might shake it a little bit, but for the most part, you need to just let that sit for as long as possible,
Right.
because it takes a good amount of time to transfuse that flavor into the liquor.
Makes sense.
Takes quite a bit of time. And it is similar with law of attraction and a new way of thinking about how you could succeed. It takes time of steeping yourself in that
Exactly.
for it to pick up. For a
Right.
strong flavor of law of attraction, you're going to have to steep yourself. And I think that if you're trying to shorten the process of infusing law of attraction into your life and success and higher self marketing and soul led entrepreneurship, one of the best ways you can do that is to be diligent and infuse a lot of people talking about that into your life.
Yes.
And if you don't have friends or individuals in your life that can do that, using YouTube videos, podcasts can be a great way to start bringing that into your vibration as something you are used to hearing and are used to talking about.
And I think this is also a good time to say, create boundaries. If you have family or friends who speak about things that are low vibration constantly,
Uh-huh.
or if you're watching the news regularly, or
Or other
even the
people.
weather,
Yeah, or other people that are talking very low vibration, constantly bringing that into your sphere. A lot of people will experience that when they're really getting deep into law of attraction, is that they can't watch some of the things that they used to be
yes,
able to watch. And there's nothing wrong with that. And I know that it's a tricky topic sometimes with regards to boundaries and what boundaries look like. Because again, most of us probably didn't have a lot of experience with what a healthy boundary looked like as a child or as a young adult. And I think the tricky part is you can go overboard, and some quote unquote experts recommend going overboard. Well, if they're negative, cut them out of your life, never talk to them again. And I think
yeah,
that is not
no,
the way to go about it. I think that the tricky part to navigate is that if you have somebody constantly telling you you're not going to succeed, that you're not a good person, who are you to think that you can do this? Money is evil. If you have money, you're a bad person. If somebody is constantly saying those things, it can be very difficult when you are learning not to think those things about yourself
mhm,
to be around that. And limiting time with those people is going to be for your betterment. And as you get deeper in, it will be easier to ignore them.
yeah,
It'll be easier to hear them say those things and go, you poor soul. To think those
yeah.
things, poor soul.
The other thing that you can do, and I know I've had to do this myself, because a lot of times it's family and it's
Usually, yeah.
hard to move away from family because we're told we shouldn't do those things. What I've done is I've gotten where I just plain don't respond.
Yeah.
If they start to say something that
Yeah.
goes down a road I don't want to hear about, I just don't make any response whatsoever. I'm
In my head, I'm
silent.
going,
I might make a response like, oh, and that be about it. Well, but I started by saying these are subjects I don't discuss.
yeah,
I let them know. Oh, I just want you to know I don't talk about politics with anybody. I don't talk about the news with anybody. I don't talk about the weather when it's something that you consider harmful with anybody. And then when those things come up, I just stop responding. And they usually can notice because I know it takes time sometimes for some of them to notice that you seem to be very quiet whenever they reach those subjects. And sometimes what you have to do is just say, "Oh, I just realized I have to go." Mhm. And then end the conversation or leave. Whatever you feel you need to do for you.
yeah,
Because what my favorite line is, protect your joy. And if you feel your joy starting to go down, there
yeah.
are certain people when you get done with the conversation, if you're not protecting your joy, you feel it big time. And everyone around you feels it big
Yep.
time. Jules can tell you that because she's been there when would do that. You need to protect your joy. Work at that, whatever that takes for you.
Yeah.
And what avenue feels best for you is the avenue to take. Don't let someone tell you what to do, but protect your joy.
And I've noticed this with many people that have gone down the path of law of attraction and soul-led entrepreneurship. And depending on where you are in your journey, you may have experienced this too, is occasionally you will end up in the in-between place where you feel a little bit isolated because you don't want to be around people that
Right.
are talking like that. And you don't yet have the people that don't talk like that in your life.
Exactly.
that you might feel a little isolated. And it's important to, again, if you don't have people in your physical life, reach out and find people in your virtual life that can support you during those times. Because I think the part that I always get a little bit anxious about when I hear other people talking is that it's really important to have a support group. It's really important to have community around you.
Right.
And I don't think it's often talked about in a balanced way enough is that, yes, you need to be careful and protect your joy and be careful around people that bring you down,
Yeah.
that bring you into anxiety or depression or sadness or trauma.
Yeah.
And definitely limit yourself with how much you are re traumatizing yourself because you were told that you are supposed to keep this person in your life.
Yeah.
And I think that is something that you should distance from. But equally, as you distance from that, go toward something healthier because I've seen in some scenarios where that distancing can create a unhealthy boundary or an unhealthy relationship with these gurus or these experts where you end up very isolated and you end up in an echo chamber.
True.
And I think that is where that
Yeah.
balance needs to happen because at no point, in my opinion, should you only be listening to one quote unquote expert, one quote unquote
No.
guru.
No.
Having multiple inputs is so important to you growing in law of attraction, growing in your spirituality, growing in your success in a balanced way. Because what I've seen happen when you end up in those echo chambers is something comes out about that person that you are in the echo chamber of that is not very positive
Right.
and it's not very nice. And then all of a sudden, your world kind of shatters
Yeah.
because you've built up everything you have around a human being
True.
that is not you.
Yep.
And so that's something that I've thought a lot about in relation to having a community and talking about these things for us is that I want to encourage that balance and encourage you to not end up in anyone's echo chamber
Right.
because everyone is human
Mm.
that you're talking to. And so if you start building your life around the ideals or the recommendations of one human being, if that human being isn't always a great person, that can really shake what you've built your life around.
Yeah.
But if you build your success and who you are around multiple people that have great advice, if one of those people ends up not being a great person in their private lives, it's not going to shake you because you're going to know that the advice that person gave was sound.
Right.
They just didn't always follow it.
Right. Because
And
it's human.
it's not going to shatter you to find out that person's human and that they're not always an angel
Well,
that they put out there because you have a balanced viewpoint and understanding of how you've built your life.
exactly. Yeah. You have much stronger foundation.
Yeah.
Always want to build a strong foundation. I also want to bring up, because I realize that what you're saying is that sometimes people become sheltered.
Yeah.
They become in a situation where they feel alone.
Mhm.
Being neurodivergent, I
Mhm.
understand that sometimes you might put down your foot and say, this is a boundary I no longer can go across. And maybe it's with your significant other or your roommate
Or
or
your parents
best
or
friend or you're away from that situation completely. You feel all of a sudden totally alone
yeah,
and may go into a state of depression. I want to make sure that you reach out to people.
exactly. Yes, 100% because and it is similar to the echo chamber of a guru is if you've ever had a narcissistic person in your life and you are more sensitive or are neurodivergent, it can be very subtle and very impactful when you realize that you are being mistreated and you are not in a good place and they have isolated you from everyone.
Yes.
You have no longer have a support system because they have isolated you completely. And I have seen that
I have.
in relation to coaching as well as relationships, as well as parent-child relationships. It happens all over the place. And it can be very subtle when it happens. And it can sound like good advice at first.
Yes.
Well, that person doesn't make you happy. Every time you go hang out with that person, you come back upset.
Yeah.
So you shouldn't hang out with that person anymore. Well, that person might be giving you really valuable feedback, and that's why you're upset. It's because, once again, when you feel that dissonance, it's your higher self going, something isn't quite right here. And yeah, when you are in the situation where you're leaving that, know that a lot of the people that you isolated from would probably be more than happy to have you back in their life if you just reach out.
And this is really important at this moment for us to share because I am sensing that someone who's listening to this,
No.
whether it be shortly after we say it or down the road, someone who's listening to this is feeling that exact way.
Yeah.
Don't allow that depression to take over.
Or the voice that has been yammered at you for a very long time. Because a lot of times, again, we take on self talk from what people are talking at us.
Yeah.
Like, I've heard a lot of people talk about that they realize that their negative inner self talk is actually their father or a past partner
Right.
or what have you. And those people say, you told those people to fuck off 2 years ago. Like, they're going to help you now. They're
Yeah.
not going to want anything to do with you. Those are, as Amanda Francis puts it, lies from the devil.
Yeah.
Those are lies from the devil. Those are not accurate depictions of the world around you. They just seem like they're accurate depictions because that is what you are most familiar with.
Yeah.
But know that if people from your past don't want to step up, and probably at least some will,
Right.
start reaching out to new people.
Yeah.
Start reaching out to a support group.
Yeah.
Start reaching out to a community. And what our main goal with LunaCco is to provide a community that is positive, that provides a place for people to safely grow and connect with other human beings and get support during difficult times and have validation when they need validation,
Yeah.
to have tools in their toolkit to be able to handle low vibration experiences without ending up in the trenches of depression for long periods of time.
Yeah.
And that's our goal, is to provide a community for people that have experienced things that we've experienced in our past.
Yes.
So yes, very important. You are not alone, and things are only getting better for you. The world is trying, the universe is trying its hardest to benefit you in this moment. And that everything you have lost, that if it's truly lost, it was not serving you and it was preparing you for something better.
Exactly. Stand strong.
And don't try to bury how you're feeling right now.
And don't try to jump back into what was bad because at least there was someone.
Yeah.
Because
there's the danger of the comfort
that is
zone.
a danger. And it is something we do.
Yep.
Try not to do that. Try to reach out to as many people as you can.
Yeah.
I know there are communities, like we said, we plan to have
We're working on building one. Yeah.
we plan on that kind of community. But right now, there are communities on Facebook, there are communities on TikTok, there are communities on Instagram.
Yeah.
Wherever you need to go, there are communities that you can find of people who will understand where you're coming from.
Yes.
And will want to support you.
Yeah. Reach out.
Yes.
Reach out, and it will feel probably uncomfortable.
Oh, definitely.
Push yourself to be surrounded by people, whether it feels cozy or not. We're introverted.
Yeah.
By nature. And trust me, I know that finding other people to be around, especially when you're going through something difficult, can feel very alien and very uncomfortable and very unpleasant. But positive things can happen when you have people around you promoting positive things happening. And when you're on your own going through a hard time, it is easy to end up in wallowing in your pain. And it's much harder to wallow in that pain with other people around. It's a lot easier sometimes to offload some of that pain onto people that can hold space for you to do that.
Right.
And again, if worse came to, find a support group, find some form of help. I know therapy is expensive in the US, but find some support group, find online, in reality, find a meetup group, And it doesn't necessarily have to be around mental health. It could be finding a bowling group.
Yeah.
And it's something that helps you get out of your head enough that you get that room to breathe.
Yeah.
And I am also, really briefly as we close this episode out, a firm believer that if what you need is to get a little bit of breathing room, medication might be a good way for you to do that.
Sometimes that's needed.
I am not a type of person with New Age spirituality that believes that all medication is the devil. I don't think that's true. And I know from my past, sometimes the only thing you can do to give yourself some breathing room so that you're not fully drowning is to reach out and get medication.
Yeah.
And it doesn't have to be a lifelong thing, regardless of what the doctor says when you get on it. But if it's something that gives you a little bit of breathing room for you to be able to take further steps to get out of the hole, then I think that is the right call. Don't let spirituality or the fact that there is energy healing out there prevent you from getting the air you need now. Yeah, hypnotherapy and EFT and EMDR and long-term talk therapy might be the greatest thing for you long-term. But if somebody is drowning, you don't tell them some swim lessons would really come in handy for you.
Yeah.
It's too late for swim lessons, Karen. I'm fucking drowning. I don't need swim lessons. I need a lifesaver. And if
need a pole to pull me in, please.
Exactly. I need a rope. I need something more than your thoughts and prayers.
Yeah.
So don't let the idea of what you think spirituality or energy healing is prevent you from getting the help you need now.
Yes.
Because sometimes you feel like you can't approach healing, true healing at the moment because that is too far away from where you're feeling now. And sometimes that medication can give you enough leeway to get to the healing part. And you need that leeway before you can get to the healing part. And it is sometimes frustrating for me to hear people talk shit about antidepressants or anti-anxiety meds.
I agree.
Especially when they haven't been there.
Yeah.
And almost more frustrating when they have.
True.
Because you hear a lot of people go, I was put on anti-anxiety medication. If I knew what I knew now, I wouldn't let them do that to me. Okay, but you got where you are now because you went on anti-anxiety medication. Moot point, Fred. And I was on anti-anxiety and I was on an antidepressant for a while. And at the point that I was at in my life, I needed leeway.
I was on it once before too.
And sometimes you need the leeway. And I am a supporter of anything that can help you start pulling yourself out of the hole.
Yeah.
And sometimes that's medication. Sometimes that's traditional talk therapy. Sometimes that's EFT or EMDR. There's a lot of pathways out of the hole. And I don't think any of them are innately better than the other if they're getting you out of the hole.
I agree.
You know, there's the old, it's a Christian
I knew where you're going to go. Yep. I know what one that is.
Where, again, were they drowning or hanging off of a cliff? I think
they were sitting on top of a roof while the flood was coming through.
Yes, they were sitting on top of a roof as the flood waters raised, and they prayed to God to save them. And guy comes by in a rowboat and says, "Oh, get in the boat. I'll save you." He goes, "No, I'm waiting for God to save me."
Yep.
And then a guy comes by in a helicopter, lowers a rope, go, "Climb up, hurry. Oh, the waters are almost at you. Let's get you out of here." "Oh, no, God will save me." And then the guy drowns and he ends up at the pearly gates and he goes, "God, why didn't you save me?" And he goes, "Well, I sent 2 different people to help you out and you said no to both."
Yep.
And to me, that is medication. And again, if affirmations give you that leeway, use affirmations.
Definitely.
If running 2 miles every morning is where you can get a little leeway, do that. If it is a little pill out of a bottle, then take the little pill.
If you're going into a new business, research can do it sometimes. Start researching things. If that is something that you love to do is research. Yeah. Whatever it is that can help give you that rope.
Yeah.
Take that rope.
1000%.
Except for
drugs, alcohol. Yeah.
Except for things that can harm you, such as drugs, alcohol, or the person that just left that was actually a problem.
That's not going. None of those things are actually getting you out of the hole. They're getting you deeper into the hole.
Yeah. We want to help
Yeah,
get
don't
you to
don't
go at higher vibrations or higher levels
yeah, don't go
away
with
from the water.
don't go with the easy coping mechanism.
Yeah.
Go with something that's pulling you out of where you are into a better situation for the future period.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I think that's a good place to end it. And we will definitely be playing with some different hypnotherapy conjunction
Yeah.
stuff with doing LunaTap and the brain entrainment as well. And I look forward to seeing how that works for you guys.
And if you have any questions
Yeah.
or ideas or concerns, please
Yeah. Reach out.
message us. We'd
Mhm.
love to hear from you.
It's hello@lunacco.design. Thank you for joining us on this episode of LunaCco Coffee Chat.
We hope you enjoyed sipping on some soulful business wisdom.
If you're loving what you hear, don't forget to subscribe.
And leave us a frothy review on your favorite podcast platform.
Stay connected with us by following at LunaCco Design, which is at LunaCco Design on Instagram.
And feel free to slide into our DMs with your burning questions and topic requests.
Remember, your entrepreneurial journey is uniquely yours.
And we're here to be your guides in the world of soul-led success.
Until next time, brew your dreams, sip your goals, and may your cup runneth over with abundance.
Cheers to your cosmic success, dear listener.
I think that was fun.